Josh Heupel gave his weekly press conference during the season on Monday to update Tennessee football and how things are going after the Vols got off to a 1-0 start with a 45-26 win over Syracuse. And Heupel revealed injury updates on Rickey Gibson III and Jaxson Moi. For those who don't know, Rickey Gibson III was knocked out of the game early in Tennessee's win over Syracuse. Jaxson Moi was also knocked out of the game. Nathan Robinson came in for Jaxson Moi. Nathan Robinson then got knocked out of the game. Now, Jamal McCoy and David Sanders Jr. were already out of the game. They were already hurt and missed the game. David Sanders doesn't seem as serious. Jamal McCoy's was expected. However, Josh Heupel, the two big stories were Jaxson Moi and Rickey Gibson III. And Heupel provided updates on those Monday. According to Josh Heupel, Rickey Gibson III is going to be out for, quote, an extended period of time. Now, what that means, we don't know. But could it be a few weeks? Could it be a couple of months? We don't know. He injured his left arm in the season opener. The exact nature of the injury is unknown. Moi, according to Heupel, will miss this week, but he hopes to get Moi back quickly. Now, on the surface, Rickey Gibson's injury by itself is more concerning because he was out for longer. He's going to be out for longer. However, then you have to talk about needs and issues, and that leads to this question, and it is today's tough question. Is Josh Heupel or Rickey Gibson III's injury more concerning long term? The poll question up. You guys can vote on it now. Whose injury is more concerning? Not Josh Heupel, excuse me, Jaxson Moi. Is Jaxson Moi or Rickey Gibson III's injury more concerning long term? Whose injury is more concerning? You guys can vote on the poll question up right now. Jaxson Moi or Rickey Gibson III. Now, it would seem to be Rickey Gibson III because Rickey Gibson III is going to be out longer. That much is clear. They're both going to miss this weekend, but Rickey Gibson III is probably going to miss quite a few more weekends after that. And Tennessee's already depleted in the secondary because of the injury to Jamal McCoy. However, I'm actually going to take a different route on this, believe it or not. I'm going to say that Jaxson Moi's injury is more concerning. And let me break down why. We all saw Colton Hood play on Saturday. Colton Hood played elite for Tennessee. I mean, he played incredible. He had 3 pass deflections, recovered a fumble, ran it in for the end zone for a touchdown, and also had 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo. And his PFF grade was 75.4. Also, Ty Redmond showed that. I'm sorry, his PFF grade was 75.6. Excuse me, 75.4. Also, Ty Redmond stepped up, was very good as a true freshman. 75.6 PFF rating, played 60 snaps. Jalen McMurray stepping in the star position, 73.9, had a sack, deflected a pass that was intercepted, was key. Boo Carter had one of his worst games, still getting back, I think, into the rhythm of things, but had a 67.8. I think when you take that into account, I think it's safe to say that Tennessee's cornerbacks are very deep. They have a lot of talent there. So even with Rickey Gibson III out for an extended period of time, they should be okay. And don't forget, Jamal McCoy, my understanding the whole time was they just wanted to get through the Syracuse game because they expect him to be full go by the Georgia game. Now, how true that is, I don't know, but they do expect him to be ready to go. So if McCoy is back, and I expect him to be back next week against Georgia, and you have the depth with Colton Hood, Ty Redmond, and Jalen McMurray, I think even with Rickey Gibson III out for an extended period of time, I think the cornerbacks are just so much better as a unit that Jaxson Moi's injury is more concerning because one behind Jaxson Moi, Nathan Robinson got hurt. But most importantly, Tennessee had to replace 3 defensive linemen from last year's team. Interior defensive linemen. If you count James Pierce, it would be 4, but I count edge rushers differently. So 3 interior defensive linemen from last year's team, which would be they had to replace Amari Thomas, Elijah Simmons, and Omar Norman-Lott. Stepping into those roles are Bryson Eason, Jaxson Moi, and obviously David Hobbs. David Hobbs is already hurt. And Then Nathan Robinson got hurt, who was going to be the fourth guy. Now Jaxson Moi is hurt. Bryson Eason's going to step in. Tennessee's going to have to go more to its going to have to go deeper on the defensive line now because they have so many injuries there up front. Now, Tyree Weathersby, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West all played. Jamal Wallace got some action. Marion Dye, Ethan Utley as a true freshman is going to be the one to step in, it looks like. But Josh Shell didn't step in, and he was a transfer that they got from Grand Valley State that they thought could step in immediately. So there is a lot of lack of depth on this defensive line at tackle that they had last year. Remember, last year they went 60 regularly. On the end, there's two defensive tackle spots and one defensive end spot. The defensive end spot is fine. Dominic Bailey, Tyree Weathersby, Tyree West, totally fine. The issue is in the middle. Last year they went 60 with Amari Thomas, Omar Norman-Lott, Elijah Simmons, Jaxson Moi, Bryson Eason, and David Hobbs. This year, Moi is now hurt. Hobbs is out. Robinson and Hobbs is out. Well, let me start over. They lost Thomas, Simmons, and Omar Norman-Lott. Now, Hobbs is out, and now Moi just got hurt, leaving one of the 6 rotational guys from last year still there, Eason. Okay. Nathan Robinson's supposed to be another depth guy, got hurt in the game on Saturday against Syracuse. Should be okay, but that's still a loss. And Moi was the biggest playmaker of that group of the 3 guys returning that were contributors last year. Jamal Wallace, again, could help out, but now you got Jamal Wallace, Bryson Eason, and Ethan Utley, and you're going to have to turn to a freshman or two. Josh Shell's going to have to get in there. So I think the already existing injuries on the defensive line and the lack of depth there is the biggest reason Jaxson Moi's injury is actually more concerning. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The poll question up, whose injury is more concerning? Rickey Gibson III leads the way at 67%. Jaxson Moi is at 33%. I understand why many of you guys would want to say Rickey Gibson III with this 67% injury. I just can't bring myself to look past the lack of depth on the defensive line and what was very exciting for Tennessee about Jaxson Moi this year. He was supposed to be such a big playmaker. Of course, again, Nathan Robinson made the big play in the Syracuse game where he had the strip sack that Colton Hood recovered and ran into the end zone for the touchdown. But the depth that we're talking about there at the defensive line, it's just not there that it was last year. Although they ran a lot more defensive linemen on Saturday. Again, you can't put too much stock in that. They were playing Syracuse. Syracuse is a bad team up front, guys. They had a bad offensive front last year. They couldn't run the ball. And once again, they had a bad offensive front this year. So when you take that into account, even though the win itself was impressive overall, you can't really take into account the defensive front and what they were doing, or the offensive line for that matter, because Syracuse is very soft in the middle. That's not their style. They don't get the players for that. They are very limited in what they're able to do. And because of that, I think that Tennessee looked a lot better on the defensive line than they're going to look for the rest of the year. So with that, I think Jaxson Moi is a bigger concern, his injury, even though Rickey Gibson III is going to be out for a more extended period of time, and Tennessee's best defensive back is already hurt. I think Tennessee is still deeper at cornerback. They will have Jamal McCoy back soon enough, and the other injuries on the defensive line are going to be why Jaxson Moi's injury is more concerning overall. Now, to the message board, David Speaks says they have Bailey and West for depth inside, both being 6'3", 295 to 305. You're right, David, and they can mix and match and alternate and rotate for that. But you're still down, which they've done with the interior defensive line. They got a nose tackle, a defensive tackle, and a defensive end that are all roughly the same size a lot of times, just put in at different positions. And you're right, West and Bailey are both on the end. But at all 3 positions, they like to combine the 3 to go about 10 to 12 deep. When you're without Hobbs, when you're without Moi, when you may be without Robinson, and you lost 3 interior linemen from last year, that becomes harder. So it doesn't matter if you guys move them in. You still need that depth at the defensive end spot too. So that's still a concern. overall. And with that in mind, I think that Tennessee is going to have a problem with Jaxson Moi being out if he doesn't get healthy quickly. Now, this could be holding him out for precautionary reasons. We don't know, but it's not the best start for the Vols.